Hello, welcome to our mock debate on teacher-centered approaches to learning versus non-traditional approaches to learning.
Hi, this is Manette, and I am going to be talking about the advantages of teacher-centered learning tactics. A lot of times teacher-centered learning can be viewed as where the teachers are the primary authority figure, which however you look at it, I guess that is true. Students sometimes, some folks might say, well, this is not the greatest setup because students are just there to receive information passively from the teachers through their lectures, through their direct instruction. And so I'm going to be talking a little bit about the positives about teacher-centered learning environment and that kind of setup. It's true that the teacher is kind of like in charge of the show, so to speak, but there's some real advantages to this. Having the teacher as the central person delivering information here allows for the instructor to plan ahead of time and have at least chunks of the year or chunks of the semester pre-planned, and they know what direction they're headed. There's usually a logical arrangement of the material. It allows for the teacher to just have a classroom management setup that's predictable, that provides certain parameters for the students, the learners, to have an environment that's predictable for them, and it fosters cooperation amongst them, and also provides focus for the subject at hand versus getting off topic. Okay, so I've briefly described what learning-centered teaching or learning environment is and what makes this work, basically. So the teacher, the instructor, is the subject matter expert. The teacher is usually prepared simply through their education. So the instructor has special training in their area or their subject or the particular grades that they are teaching or grade. They have been credentialed by their institution. Usually they have trained with teachers that are experienced, and so they've had some time usually with their student teaching experience. And some states even require first year of teaching to be like a credentialing year. So it's almost like a training or a practicum year, and then eventually they become fully licensed through their state. So a teacher has to really go through many different layers in order to finally step foot in their classroom and be a teacher and be in charge of their classroom. Okay, so at this point, the teacher is in their own classroom. They are planning for their semester or the entire year. So there are a couple factors going into place, especially with K through 12 education. Not only is the subject at hand important, but it's also important to just lay down the expectations for the classroom. How are the learners going to interact with one another? How are they expected to interact with the teacher? And how is just the generalized flow of the classroom going to work? And so all of these various plans together work together in unison for the teacher to essentially help direct not only the timing, but also the just the generalized orchestration of how the learners are interacting together. And then also just by virtue of being with the students, the teacher is able to also kind of just direct maybe personalities, and all of this goes into play So now, depending on what the student's level is, as far as is the information going to be completely new, or is it something maybe where the kids have had some experience with, and now the teacher is going to be introducing more detail. So depending on where the students are coming in, the teacher is able to just go ahead and either springboard them straight into something or have to maybe give them a baseline information so that everybody's on the same playing field. Is it something where the learners need to add to their vocabulary? Is there a new set of words? Is there a new type of language involved here regarding the topic or the subject? Is it so new that the teacher needs to provide some baseline information? So this is where teacher-centered instruction gets a little bit of flack, because a lot of times it tends to come off as very lecture-y and just kind of sit and take notes. But it's sometimes necessary to just give the kids a baseline, give the learners a baseline of information so that then they can better explore the topic at hand. At the point where all the bases are covered, then the students are able to then take part on some hands-on activities that the teacher has planned. So now things are moving in sequence. They've gotten their baseline of information, and now they're ready to manipulate that information in some way, and hopefully discover some new things that they didn't get from the baseline information. But now, since they have that foundation, they can better explore whatever activities have been planned for them. And so this kind of helps move the direction of the topic and the subject where it needs to be. This also doesn't mean that teacher-centered learning is stagnant and doesn't ever go off track. If the teacher observes that the learners are having trouble, then she or he can kind of pull back and focus on the trouble areas. If everybody is doing wonderfully and having a great time with it and ready to explore more, then at that point the instructor can kind of add more detail or insert another activity to further exploration. Now, another advantage of teacher-centered learning is that it can lend itself to low-tech options. Maybe not necessarily an ideal situation, but sometimes teachers may find themselves in a school or a school district that for whatever reason does not have the funds to upgrade technology, or it may be put off for another year for whatever reason. And so because it is centered on what the teacher knows and what the teacher plans, they can modify to a low-tech option if they need to, and have the learners bring in items from home, or the teacher can collect certain items. A lot of times they can even include the rest of the school and say, hey, we're going to be doing this project, and then let's collect these items, for Mrs. Smith, and she's going to be doing a project with her students. So a lot of times, even though there may not be enough funds for high technology, the information is still disseminated and activities can still be designed from the teacher's original plans. On the opposite side of the spectrum, there can also be high-tech options. So the teacher does, let's say in this other scenario, the teacher does have use of technology, has access to technology, the students have access, and whether it's the school or the students also have technology access at home, and in some way, however way it can be ensured that the students have access. then teachers can use technology within the classroom and outside the classroom to help the learners prepare for whatever the topic is. In certain situations, so like for example, a flipped classroom, which is a way to provide information to the students ahead of time, and they're able to come into class prepared for the topic at hand. They've been able to use technology outside of the classroom so that they can further explore a topic within the classroom. And then, of course, there are also other examples of just having technology available in the classroom, and so that the students can further explore the topic. So overall, even though teacher-centered learning approach can possibly get a little bit of a bad rap, there are a lot of advantages to it, and also in general very flexible. So even though this can be seen as a possibly like a traditional and potentially outdated way of thinking of education, it can really be updated with whatever is available at hand. So it's a very versatile teaching approach and can always be kept in instructors' back pocket as another tool that they can use in addition to maybe some other approaches.
Another approach to learning would be informal and blended non-traditional approaches. Hi, my name is Aisha Williams, and instead of focusing on how the instructor or teacher affects the learning process, I am going to discuss the benefits of non-traditional approaches, focusing on more learner-centered environments and applications. This would include methodologies that create more authentic learning environments, allows for more flexibility in structure, and the implementation of dynamic learning tools and materials. Learning contexts are based on perceptions of how relevant the information is to the learner. Thus, non-traditional learning approaches allow for more learner-centered environments. Learners come to the classroom with preconceptions on how the world works, and many of these perceptions come from the learner's natural environments. Technological affordances have allowed for technology to be a generation-specific affordance that is common in both natural environments and learning environments. Thus, it is vital to create learning environments that are more authentic to 21st century learning, including multimedia technologies. Traditional classroom settings attempt to harness present-day expectations to aid learning, but with stagnant structures, while non-traditional approaches include incorporating multimedia and other learning technologies that create more adaptive learning styles and structures. This means creating flexibility in learning implementations, as well as easily applying changes to the learning structure. One example is how many school teachers are beginning to incorporate the Canvas platform to create interactive learning structures. As previously mentioned, traditional learning environments rely heavily on old-fashioned learning tools like chalkboards, books, and plain paper. Learners move across time while simultaneously moving across multiple learning disciplines. Thus, learners are interacting in environments where traditional tools are becoming insufficient in the learning process. One of the main issues in non-traditional approaches to learning is the cost of new technologies. Many schools are not properly provided funding for additional classroom materials, especially higher cost items like educational technologies. Fortunately, though, we are currently entering a time where technology is becoming increasingly available and therefore more affordable. However, another problem is the knowledge and skill needed by teachers. Depending on the teacher's professional background, implementing non-traditional approaches to learning may be very foreign and therefore require the teacher to take time to research and develop appropriate approaches. This also includes assessing their learners' needs. There are virtually thousands of technologies that can be considered educational. Educators must assess their learners' technological capabilities when implementing these technologies, to avoid usability failures. Usability failures can potentially lead to negative transfers and connotation in the learning process. Thank you for listening.